All right, everybody, happy 4th week of July. My name is Eli Robinson. I am the Chief Trivia Officer here at Water Cooler Trivia. We run a trivia game every week designed for companies, organizations, nonprofits, etc., all over the country and the world to stay connected, have a good time, and enjoy seeing what everybody that they work with knows and how good they are at reproducing it. You can always find me online at Chief Trivia Officer on the various platforms. You can also find us online at watercoolertrivia.com. We have a 4-week free trial, no credit card. You can always have us bring a little bit joy to your week to the extent that you're interested in doing it. Each week we get on here and we talk about what happened in the last week's quiz, what we expected, what was weird, what was not. So let's jump right into it. In this week's game, we have 4,197 users. Average score of 7.78, pretty good. A median of 8, pretty swell as well. As you can see, we have kind of the large peak around 7, 8, and 9, which is always what we're going for. We want the quiz to be very approachable. We're not trying to make people feel like they're dumb or don't get it right. So we really like to see that peak. And a 15% perfect score rate is something that's totally acceptable to us. So let's jump in right into question number 1. Let's party like it's 1922. That's right, we're here for you this week with some trivia centering on all the fun things that happened 100 years ago. So grab your flapper dresses and let's head back to the Jazz Age. 19 years after the Gettysburg Address, architect Henry Bacon completed a poolside DC memorial to which U.S. president? So we would have expected this to be around a 95% correct question. It was only 87% correct. The answer is, of course, Abraham Lincoln. I think the image really threw people off because when it was dedicated in 1922, that probably would have been President Harding or President Coolidge that was there. But the question is, who is the memorial dedicated to? Which is, of course, the answer is Abraham Lincoln. So, kind of surprising. I think there's a lot of people who would have known this if we were a little bit more straightforward. But 87%, probably one of our lowest Q1s in a while, but still way up there. Question number 2. They went independent from the UK and uncovered King Tut's tomb. So went a stellar 1922 for what North African country? 96% correct. Of course, the answer is Egypt, with a wonderful picture of one of the relics from King Tut's tomb there on the right. Very good, very happy with this question, very straightforward. I would imagine that the image helped, although I would think that as soon as someone hears the term King Tut, they theoretically should know that it's Egypt, but 96% correct, very, very happy. Question number 3, founded in 1922 by a retired agricultural professional, what insurance company didn't adopt their "like a good neighbor" slogan until 1971? 96% correct. Of course, the answer to this question is State Farm. Marketing slogans are always one of those things that's very impressive. That like people, kudos to corporate America for getting people to know them and remember them. I do want to give a shout out to everybody who answered Farmers Insurance. It is an insurance company, and based on how we clued the question, one would imagine that Farmers Insurance would be a reasonable answer. However, in this case, the answer was State Farm. Question number 4, milkshakes, pina coladas, frappuccinos, oh my. They're all much easier to make thanks to Stephen Poplawski's 1922 invention of what electrical kitchen appliance? So this is a fun fact. I wouldn't have imagined that the blender was 100 years old, but the electric blender is in fact 100 years old. 97% of y'all got this right. I must say I would not have expected this to be that high. I don't own a blender, and so, don't be too shocked. But I didn't really guess I knew how popular a blender was. We tried to think of fun things that you made in a blender, and it seems that this was right on. A couple people guessed mixer. We actually asked a question about stand mixers recently that I believe were in a different year, so we didn't accept mixer. Although with 97% of people getting it right, pretty straightforward, and glad we could educate people on some little fun fact. Speaking of fun facts, number 5. Ralph Samuelson didn't know what he was doing when he took a pair of boards and a rope out on Lake Pepin in Minnesota in the summer of '22. After a couple days of experimenting, he ended up inventing what recreational activity? You can see a image of Lake Pepin there on the right. 86% correct. So this is, of course, the invention of water skiing. Yes. Water skiing, very, very happy with the litany of other water sports that were guessed: wakeboarding, kite surfing, all the kayak, etc., which all totally make sense. I think this one likely predated a lot of those, and I think this was just great. A little bit of a testament to American ingenuity. Some guy with a boat and a rope and some boards went out and did it. I don't think Mr. Samuelson is with us anymore, but thank you, sir. 100 years later, water skiing still really, really fun thing to do. Question number 6, and this is where things started to get a little bit hairy. American television and film writer-producer Norman Lear turns 100 on July 27th. What's the 11-letter C word that we use for a person who hits this milestone age? So there's a picture of the quite dapper and young-looking Mr. Lear there on the right. So 58% correct. The correct answer is centenarian. Now, because we gave it as a clue, because we gave the clue of the first starting letter as well as the number of letters in the word, we got an insane amount of answers that look something like centenarian. Now, I could produce them all for you, and all of you would have various opinions about how close to centenarian we actually got. But it's clear, based on the number of people who wrote in, kind of objecting to how we graded this question, that this was one of those that really seemed to get to people. So what we ended up doing, and I talked to the quizmaster and a little bit of the writer's room about this, is we ended up counting any spelling that mirrored centenarian. So, and I put, I think, some form of how you would spell it out using phonetics things there on the right. So you had to have, there's a couple schwa sounds in there, between the cent and the narian. So you could use a lot of different vowels to do that. We didn't really accept anything that did not make it clear that you very much knew the word. Now, this wasn't supposed to be a spelling question, and I guess we was very unintentional that we were going to basically step on this landmine of a million different guesses. And we don't even know who was guessing versus who actually knew the answer and just didn't know how to spell it. So we're gonna walk a fine line on these pseudo spelling questions. Clearly this was a hot button issue for answerers. We think we approached it the right way and ultimately leading to 58% correct, but are very aware that this was something that was seemed to be on people's minds when they were answering it. Question number 7. Sorry, I'm not sorry for this one. Although it didn't make it past 1991, which nation was formally announced to the world on the stage of the Bolshoi Theater in December 1922? So 65% correct on this, and there's a picture of the beautiful Bolshoi Theater there on the right. So the answer to this one is the Soviet Union or USSR or whatever it may be. So this was not supposed to be a trick question. In fact, when we slotted, this was the last question we slotted in. I actually expected it to be very easy. I'm the one who included the Zari, I'm not sorry for this one. And I think people saw the CZ in Zari, and they were like, oh, they're cluing us to the answer being Czechoslovakia. We got lots and lots and lots of answers as Czechoslovakia. Now, the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia actually are very close in age to one another. So I believe they both ended around 1991. Czechoslovakia, I believe, technically was founded a few years earlier, in 1918. So, this was one of those where it's not supposed to be a trick question, bizarre, etc. I'm happy, we likely rewarded people for taking the simpler approach, which I don't hate doing. Would have liked to see this in the 80% range, but I reckon that 15% kind of came from people who were reading into a clue that wasn't there. So I'm sorry that this one didn't end up where we wanted it to be, but ultimately the answer is the Soviet Union, and then we now have amazing, we have 100 different ways that you can answer the Soviet Union, which is great. Question number 8. In 2022, VR refers to a simulated experience that can be similar to or completely different from the real world. In 1922, Marjorie Williams brought VR to the world in a story about a stuffed animal who wants more than anything to be real. What was the title of this story? So the answer is The Velveteen Rabbit. That's where the VR comes from. So only 48% correct, and I will say that this seems to be a very divisive answer, or a very divisive question. So clearly there's a lot of you out there who know the Velveteen Rabbit. You would imagine everybody knows the Velveteen Rabbit. It may have been part of your childhood, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of you who have no idea what the Velveteen Rabbit is, and as I start talking about this and have it even more, you're just like, I had no idea. I actually think this makes for a good trivia question. We got lots of Pinocchio and lots of Winnie the Pooh. I guess Pinocchio, while not a stuffed animal, wants to be real, and while Winnie the Pooh, while doesn't want to be real, is a stuffed animal. So it makes sense that those would be the guesses. Also, this one was a low enough bar that we surfaced a modal asking people how they knew the answer to it. And so likely in your group, you got some sort of box in the results email being like, Brandon knew this because blank. I really enjoyed that. I actually read a lot of people had some really endearing things for why they knew what the Velveteen Rabbit was. So 48% correct, and really enjoyed. That was a good question, well executed. Number 9, since pool wasn't hoity-toity enough for the Big Apple in 1922, New York legally rebranded the sinful game with what word? So this was like an amazing fun fact that I had never heard of. Apparently, the term billiards started getting used in New York City in 1922. People didn't like pool halls were like, dirty and dungy, and I guess bad things happened there. So in 22, they, rebranded every single pool hall as a billiards hall. I think the word existed previously, but that was like the popularization of the word, and why those things now, I believe, end up as mostly synonyms. Question number 10, last question of the week. It was kind of a small deal. The Nobel Prize in Physics 1922 was awarded to Niels Bohr for his services in the investigation of the structure of blank and of the radiation emanating from them. So the answer is atoms, A-T-O-M-S. 81% correct. There's a picture of Mr. Bohr, or probably Dr. Bohr, there on the right. About what we expect for this one. Got a lot of atom-related answers. We did not accept atom bomb, as the A-bomb would have been a couple decades later when it was developed. But like a lot of atoms and parts of atoms and things like that, which we totally understand. And yeah, the Nobel for the atom, 100 years old. So if you think about how much science has been learned in the last 100 years, very cool. It was, that's the anniversary that we're celebrating. All right, there's the question by question correct percentage. You can see a bunch up there in the 90s and very high. There's kind of 3 difficult ones there in the middle. So generally pretty happy with where we ended up in this one. And then going back to the overall stats, you see an average of 7.78, a median of 8. Very, very happy with everything that we see here. Once again, my name is Eli Robinson. I'm the Chief Trivia Officer here at Water Cooler Trivia. We would love to bring trivia to your office every week. You can find us online at watercoolertrivia.com. You can find me online at Chief Trivia Officer on all the platforms, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it may be. And hopefully you enjoyed this week and are looking forward to next week. We'll see you there.